Well, hello everyone and welcome. We're happy you could join us for today's webinar. You've chosen your QMS vendor, now what? Resonetics path to a new QMS solution. So I'm excited to introduce our guest today. His name is Dan Miller. He's a quality system analyst at Resonetics. Welcome, Dan, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Awesome. All right. My name is Jennifer Bianchini, and I'll be kind of your quasi host and monitor for today. So I'm a senior product marketing manager at ETQ. And we're going to take a quick look at the agenda for what we'll share with everyone today. So, first, we're going to go through some of the quality management challenges that can occur. These can happen all the time, or it is a one off that is critical to your organization's bottom line. And then there's what you should take into consideration when you are evaluating an eQMS for your organization. And then Dan will share Resonetics' journey in their search for a new QMS. And then we'll do a quick wrap up. So we'll have plenty of time to answer your questions. So don't be shy. Put your questions in the chat. This time is for you, helping you to be a quality champion. So let's dive in, shall we? Okay, first, I'd like to kick things off with a quick poll question. So, what is your top priority when it comes to adopting or improving a QMS? So, some of the options we have here are improving compliance. So, we see a lot of organizations start their QMS journey here because compliance is the baseline. If you can't make regulations or consistently, if you can't consistently can't make regulations, or everything else becomes harder. Next, we have increasing efficiency. So think of this as when you have efficiency gains, it unlocks the capacity for teams to shift from administrative tasks to higher value work. And then there's reducing risk. So risk reduction is often about visibility. You can see issues sooner and you can control them before they escalate. Or perhaps it's enhancing cross functional collaboration. So, this is important when teams are spread across functions and teams like operations, quality, engineering, and supply chain. And then we have standardizing processes across sites. So standardization, it supports, think of it this way, scalability, faster onboarding, and more predictable results. And then we have demonstrating ROI. So some organizations, they need to show tangible value early on. So whether it's time saved, reducing scrap, or faster cycle times. And if you're still figuring out, that's okay. This option reminds us that a QMS transformation is a journey and not just a single decision. All right, I think I've talked enough through those. Let's see what everyone has posted. Oh, very interesting. So increasing efficiency. I'll be honest, I'm a little bit surprised on that one. I thought we'd see something a little bit more tangible, like saving costs. What did you think, Dan?
Well, I think that especially like with what Resonetics was considering, it coming from what QMS was 5 years ago to coming to what it is now, there's so many improvements, so many changes that you want to capitalize on what those new softwares are offering. So kind of makes sense on what our company chose, but I can see where other sites would or other companies would want to choose something different.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Well, thanks everyone for indulging. That was really insightful. So let's get into it. And next slide, please. Okay. So let's break this down and take a look at some of the common challenges that we've seen with our customers, and maybe you're facing them too. So, taking a look at some of the options here, it's maybe it's manual systems. So here we're talking about paper. So you have information that's stuck in a filing cabinet and it's not easily accessible to everyone who may need it. We've also heard a lot about siloed systems. So, this is everything from spreadsheets and shared folders, like think of SharePoint. So, information is hard to share, and most often it's limited to get access to because of integration with other systems is not just there yet. Next is having not enough visibility that you would need into the data. So it's difficult to spot those quality trends or providing management with the reporting that they need. And then there's inefficiency. So to sum it up, as a customer once told us, I just want to store the documents. So systems aren't flexible and they're not really user friendly. And then wrapping this up is version control issues. So there might be multiple versions floating around, and it isn't easy to know which one is correct or the most up to date. And this can have a downstream effect on, say, training. So, are your teams getting trained on the most up to date processes? Who knows? So, as you can see, these are just a few examples of the challenges that we face with quality management. Um, but overall, it just makes quality management inefficient and frustrating. But we do have a better way, and it is a quality management solution. So let's now talk about building a game plan for a quality management system. Next slide, please. All right. So, to get started, let's think about breaking this down into four doable steps so it doesn't seem like this huge, haunting, daunting project that you have hanging over you. So, let's take a look at the first step. You're going to take a look at your current situation. So, think of this as you're going to go and take a look at how quality is managed today. So, where do the documents live? How are changes communicated? What are your error rates? And while you're doing this, don't forget to identify opportunities for automation and system integration into, for example, your ERP or your CRM. So you want to also at this point make sure that you capture what's working well so that you can build upon that. So the second step, you're going to here determine your needs. So this is where you're really going to be the quality champion, and you're going to share your findings across departments. So while you're doing this, you're going to be gathering feedback on how all teams are managing quality today. So with this, and when you have this information, you're going to take this and you can build a blueprint for a quality management system that shows how quality delivers strategic value for your organization. Now, our third step is going to be on focusing your setting your priorities and your goals. So here you're going to define what does success look like for those short-term wins and those long-term scalability plans that your organization might have. So here you're going to want to make sure you prioritize your KPIs for, say, document control, CAPAs, or supplier quality. You'll want to evaluate a QMS who they have the options available to you that they'll be able to scale and automate efficiently. So it can grow with you as your organization grows. So the last step here, what we recommend is building the business case. So how do you do that? You're going to clearly present the ROI to your leadership, and you're going to focus on the hard savings. And when you're doing this, don't forget to show the risk to your organization if you don't invest in a quality management system. So engage with those stakeholders. Bring those CFOs, those COs, COOs, all those C's into the conversation. And don't forget the leadership team on your IT team as well, because bringing them into the conversation, when you have a focus on the bottom line of quality, it really helps to move your case along for this investment in the organization. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so let's take a look at what organizations actually gain once they put a quality management system in place. So these are real benchmarks from customers who measure the impact of improving their quality processes. So what you see here goes far beyond um, compliance. It shows time savings, lower cost, and even faster revenue generating work. So let's take a look at some of the examples here. We have a customer who experienced a 50% reduction time in supporting external audits. So how did that happen? Why? Because everything is logged, traceable, and easy to access. They also reported back that a 30% reduction in the time spent managing customer complaints. And this is to having everything centralized and tracking and having those automated workflows. And then there's cost savings. So this is where customers are really able to achieve on average a 10% reduction in field failure costs. So fewer issues in the field means fewer returns and happier customers. All right, so let's talk about revenue, the bottom line here. When you reduce delays and improve collaboration, you speed up innovation. So our customers shared with us that they shortened their new product development timeline on average by 40%. So that's not just efficiency, but it's a competitive advantage. So, what does this all mean? Let's look at it this way. A QMS helps you to not only boost faster, QMS helps you to not only respond faster to unexpected events, but it helps you to make smarter, data driven decisions and drive real business results. So the takeaway here is pretty simple. A QMS isn't just a tool, it's a catalyst for a quality transformation, because when the unexpected happens, and it always does, you will be ready. All right. So now I'm excited to turn it over to Dan, and I'm looking forward to hearing all about your journey, Dan, when putting in a new QMS solution in place for your organization. Dan, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer, and especially to the ETQ team for giving me this opportunity to talk about Resonetics' journey forward into our new QMS solution. So, to kick things off, I figured it'd be nice to give you a high level overview of what I'm planning on talking about today. So, to start, I'll give you a little bit of detail about what Resonetics is and who we are as a company. I think it's important because it drives a lot of the decision making that we made when selecting our QMS. I'll give you some background on myself, give some support to what I'm talking to you about today. And then we'll get into the meat of the presentation, talk about what selecting that QMS looked like, the integration and things that we considered as a business, then what that production rollout go live went, how that actually happened, and then us as an organization, how did we measure the success of rolling out a new QMS? So having something as big as a QMS rolling out across a business, you need to measure how it's impacting everyone and if it's actually being utilized the way it's intended. So next slide, please. So just giving a little bit of an overview of Resonetics itself. So from an industry leadership perspective, we're a leader in micro manufacturing for med tech devices, and we're a top 10 medical device contract manufacturing company. And then innovation and expertise wise, rapid prototyping, product design, and development is all carried out through our Lightspeed and Agile labs. So this allows us to take, a design concept of a medical device and bring it all the way to, full implementation, FDA certification. So we offer a lot of services to different medical companies, full suite for them. And then over to the right, you'll see a lot of the different markets that we serve. The list is longer than this, but part of the reason that I'm showing you all of these different markets is that with different customers, different regulatory requirements, we needed a QMS system that would be able to adapt with a business that's growing, moving into these different medical fields. So that was really important when we were selecting our QMS, and why we settled on ETQ. And then the last thing that I want to touch on is that we're US based with a global presence. So we have 18 facilities across the globe and then over 3,000 employees. And if we go to this next slide, you'll actually see where all of these locations are. So you'll see that we're primarily focused in the US, but we do have sites in Canada, Costa Rica, Switzerland, and Israel. So this kind of shows you that not only did we have different sites, we had different languages, different processes that we needed to incorporate into one eQMS solution. So that's a good summary on the company. And now I'll talk a little bit about myself. So my background, I have a chemical engineering degree from the University of Dayton. So a little bit different route into the medical device field, but I ended up finding my way here. So all is good. With that, I got my certification from BSI for lead auditing under ISO 13485. And then as of today, I'm at 4 years in the medical device field. I started out as a new product engineer. So I was taking those unvalidated processes, those design processes, and turning them into validated production processes that would supply components for medical devices actually used in the field. So I feel like I had a really good experience when it came to seeing what a project needed to do to grow, and then what that documentation looked like in a QMS solution. So with that, I moved into a quality role because I really found a taste for quality that I enjoyed. And then I joined the auditing team. So with that, my QMS experience was growing, and that kind of led me into being in charge of ETQ implementation. And with ETQ, I spent a lot of my time on the core design team, working with ETQ, doing our new modules, module improvement, and then future integrations when it comes to our QMS solution as the months to come. Why I'm excited to really talk about how Resonetics took on this new QMS challenge. So I coordinated and executed the migration from our previous QMS. So that includes like the sites that weren't specifically in our old QMS and bringing everyone together in like a harmonized fashion. And then as I support ETQ now, I'm the company subject matter expert. So I'm in charge of training quality leadership and the site level SMEs. And I'll get into a little bit more about the site level SMEs later on in the presentation. And then on top of that, I am designing and implementing a lot of the changes that we're making to the ETQ system. So I have a really good understanding of the background of our QMS, how it behaves, and then I carry out that validation and rollout of the production version of ETQ for Resonetics. So that's enough about me. And now we'll talk a little bit about what selecting that QMS looked like. The next slide and this one are more generalized around scoping and how we prepared ourselves as an organization for this project. So first, we wanted to take a look at what our current situation was. And it really came down to these three things. One, we outgrew our existing QMS. Us as an organization, we were growing in terms of technology, business, and employees. And having a rigid system was not helpful when it came to adding new sites or adding new technology to our business. So on top of that, even getting a change on it was outsourced. We had to contact the software provider to get something implemented because none of those changes were really located in-house. And then lastly, having 18 sites and then they're globally located, we needed to harmonize their processes. We needed to harmonize their documents. Language was a barrier. So all of that was something that we needed to consider when we were selecting what QMS solution we wanted to go with. So after we outlined that current situation, we were able to kind of establish these requirements that we wanted when we were deciding what eQMS are we going to select. Is it going to be ETQ? So number one was internally driven changes. So the ability to drive continuous improvement, additions to the system, bringing that in-house allows the company and the business to establish its own criteria for implementing change in the QMS. And that allows for a lot of structure building within the organization. On top of that, paperless initiatives. So I think everyone here can probably relate that your company is trying to move away from paper-based systems, move into this digital age, and having an eQMS solution that supports those different programs, supports those different initiatives was going to be, another selection criteria we wanted to cover. And then the last two are kind of integrated, but we want something that ETQ showed us that we enjoyed a lot was having a modular and integrated design for each QMS component. So having your Kappa module, your document control and change management separated allows you to implement different changes, implement more process specific guardrails on those processes so that they can really become a process your organization can utilize going forward. And then lastly, that multi-system integration that Jennifer had touched on, where having an eQMS is great, but having a digital eQMS that talks to all of those other softwares that you utilize in your business, like an ERP system, your employee management, ADP, whatever it may be, anything that has data that would provide value to your eQMS solution, you want them to be able to talk. So finding a QMS solution that provided that, again, very, very important. And then this last thing, you'll see it as a common theme moving forward, but we really wanted to focus on what did we see the QMS looking like in the future, because we wanted to set those goals, those targets, what we wanted it to look like before we even started, because that allows you to drive a lot of the change, drive a lot of that continuous improvement, and show not only high level management, but the users why you're pushing for this change across the organization. So a phrase that I really like to lean on is that a QMS should be designed around your process rather than having your process designed around a QMS. If you're given something rigid and you have to write corporate level or even business level procedures that are specific to a software, it becomes a cage that you're locking yourself in as a business, not allowing you to expand on what you think is right, what you think your business would find value in. So that was something that we really wanted to consider moving forward, along with making sure that changes and improvements to the system were frequent. No system is going to be perfect, and every day changes should happen, improvements should happen. So taking that into consideration as you move forward with your QMS, again, important. And then lastly, we needed a system that would grow with our company. No company is going to be the same. You're going to continue to grow, add new employees, add new technology. So like even from Resonetics, as an example, since I started making this presentation, we've acquired 2 new businesses that'll need rolled into our QMS solution. So having that ability, having that procedure defined was going to be very critical to having, a business-wide success. So moving on to the next slide. Once we selected our QMS, this is that kind of initial scoping of the project. You needed to figure out where were the pain points going to be for the organization, where is something that's going to require extra work, because the last thing you really want to do is get started on this integration, and then there's a surprise later on down the road. So again, 4 things that I think are key to consider and what we as a business considered was data migration, design configuration, site adoption, and then future state. And starting with that data migration, how are you even going to get into your new QMS? So first, you need to look at the harmonization of your sites. We had 18 different sites, some in the same QMS, some not. And we had to organize all of the information, all of the processes across the business from a procedure, file, and data standpoint. So make sure that you understand where is that data? How are you going to integrate it into this new system? If there's anything missing, you need to consider that. And then design and configuration. So this is something ETQ provided in terms of allowing you to configure that system. Changes are allowed to be made. You can even change workflows. So if you're going to start a new system, how will it look? I think this can splinter for what type of QMS your organization has now. If you have an existing QMS, this is a really good opportunity to implement changes that you've never been able to make before. You're allowed to hold steady things from the old QMS that you enjoyed or you want to keep critical to your business. But if you've never had a QMS, there's a really good foundation for you to start on, and then you can continue to build it around what you think you as a business need. So what are your system requirements? What was good about your old system? What can you improve? And then what do you wish you had? It's a really good time to implement wish lists, especially from production level employees that are using this system day in and day out. And then honestly, the most important of all of these is that site adoption and go live. Now that you've rolled out a new system, How do you even get people to use it? I think we can all agree that people are very resistant to change. So getting people to use a system the same way, if not more than before, and have to learn it, it's something you really need to consider when you're rolling out something that impacts your business. So you need to launch your QMS without disrupting a business. So Resonetics itself heavily leans on document control, change management because of all of those different requirements. So if you want to roll out a new software, you need to consider what's going to happen during that downtime. How do I ensure that there is less of a gap? Could it be a compliance issue? So those are all things that you need to consider. And then on top of that, how do you ensure that everyone across your entire organization is trained on this new software? So again, that's that site adoption and go live. And then a common theme, like I mentioned, the future state and integration. A customizable system is only going to be as good as your customization. So one, like we mentioned, empowering that QMS to work across systems, the ERP connections, the sales, the employee management, ADP. And then just a few examples of future integrations Resonetics is working on is an NCR module that ties into the ERP inventory. Can you quarantine? Can you hold material? A complaints and RMA module. Can that impact sales orders from the Salesforce or anything that, anytime the QMS system may impact another, business operation, how do you relate that? And then maintaining and improving the system while in production. This is something that I mentioned earlier where no system is going to be perfect. So how do you process that feedback from the users? How do you leverage which changes you're going to make, what change is worth making and what change isn't going to be made? So those are all things that needed to be considered in the future, but they had to be set up when you first rolled out the system or you're going to miss a huge gap in information. So I've talked enough about scoping, and now I think it's time to show you how Resonetics handled those things. It's going to look a little bit simple, but starting on the left side, this visual I think does a really good job of representing how Resonetics tackled these challenges. So each of the steps and decisions below have an arrow running and building upwards because they all built upon one another to provide a strong foundation for Resonetics go live for the new eQMS. So it really breaks down to 3 different phases. So phase 1 is that bottom level. The first thing that we did was we identified site level SMEs for training very early. So not only did we have quality leadership providing input into the new QMS, we had each of them identify a site SME that could accompany them and support them on that training, on that understanding of the new process. So, throughout all 18 of our sites, we had 18 quality leaders, along with anywhere between 1 and 3 site level experts, just to provide that extra level of support to the sites when it came to implementing the new system. One of the other items that Resonetics decided on that I think was very valuable in determining, how the QMS was going to be implemented is we identified some high usage sites for early user acceptance testing. So we took those sites that had, a higher change management, change order process, more documents created, more new products. So bringing in those sites that are really familiar with the system and getting their feedback prior to even finishing the full rollout of the system allowed you to get a lot more detailed feedback on those processes. And then with all of that feedback, you combined it into a baseline system procedure, and that's what you're going to build everything off of. Because now that you have an understanding of how the system works, you have an understanding of how the system works with your business, you can start setting those rigid corporate procedures that you want the business to start following. You can start designing that QMS process rather than the QMS designing your process. Once we got phase 1 done, we had that foundation that we really wanted to build off of. So at that point, we started utilizing those SMEs that we had identified earlier. We started providing them with different tools to use the system, but to train others and improve it. So providing them all of the training resources that they need, short videos, recordings. We had weekly trainings with SMEs to keep them included and in the loop on any changes that were happening, improvements. While this was all happening, ETQ was updating at the same time. So it was very important to have that streamlined communication to each of our sites so that when go live happened, there wasn't this surprise in the rollout. There wasn't something new that no one was familiar with. Um, Included in that was feedback. So while we were rolling out the system, SMEs were continuing to test and complete different user acceptance testing. So we built a feedback module to process, prioritize, and categorize the feedback we were getting so that as we were continuing to develop the module with ETQ, we could implement our own personal changes that we felt were very critical to our business. And this was all happening in parallel prior to go live. What that smaller group of SMEs really provided was some focused feedback, and then extra granularity was provided because of ETQ's setup of the QMS. So ETQ designed with having each of the modules compartmentalized in its own, different process really allowed us to send out one or two modules at a time and get that detailed feedback, let those subject matter experts identify people that are very familiar with that process to provide the feedback. So one key thing you should take away, honestly, from all of this is that feedback is the most critical thing. So getting users familiar with the system early, getting them in the system and providing them the tools they need to test it really helps provide the extra information and avoid a lot of those smaller issues that may come up later before your production go live. Now, I know I'm building on top of each other. So phase 3, this was something identified afterwards where once you start rolling it out to multiple sites, even multiple individuals, this can apply to a site or a company with 5 sites, 18, or even one. It doesn't matter. But what was the most important was having that direct line of communication to get answers about the system or the QMS regardless. So what we as an organization decided is that we needed a super user group. So we identified a bunch of individuals, or a bunch, I don't mean that, a small group of individuals on the corporate quality team who are experts in the system, are very familiar with the process, and are going to continue to be involved in the changes and improvements to the system. So those users were then assigned their own sites to create a buffer between the design team and the people that are executing the go live of ETQ. What we found is that when we did go live, this provided a really good, single point of contact for each of the sites to get extra support if they needed it. So not only did they have the site level SME, their quality leaders, and then whoever the site SME trained, they also had that next level of support from the corporate quality team to provide them more detailed, more personalized support to help them move through any challenges that may be more site specific rather than system specific. So what did that result look like for Resonetics? Now that we've supported everything, how did go live occur? For us, we went live across 18 sites. I'll be honest, it wasn't a light switch of on and off. We did a staggered launch of a select amount of sites each week. It took us about 3 weeks to roll it totally out to all 18 sites. But with that consideration in mind, there was very minimal disruption to our business. There wasn't any drastic halts in any of our processes across the business. So it was a very successful staggered launch so we could provide that support to each of the, each group of sites rather than 18 at a time. Again, mentioning that clear structure for support for each of the sites and then minimal disruption to the business. So that's what our rollout looked like. And now we're moving on to measures of success. So something very important to consider, especially from that high level management, is we've now paid for a system. You've spent all of this time rolling it out. How do I even know that it worked? So luckily, ETQ provides a very good process for pulling information out through their data lake and other report features. So these are just some of the items that Resonetics use to identify or at least measure our success with the ETQ system. So just some basic ETQ usage details. Resonetics has 550 people or more log in a day, and 2,000 of those, like 2,000 logins total. So that means people are getting back in the system, they're looking up their documents, signing out, and actually utilizing it. We typically have 35 to 40 concurrent users using our QMS every single day. And then just a little bit of a summary on the modules that we've implemented, so change management and document control. Since we've implemented it, we've had 5,000 changes executed, and now we're averaging about 200 changes a week. And then over the course of just having those two modules implemented, we've already executed 4 promotions and 20 configuration changes based on feedback or improvements that we as a business wanted to uh, implement on our system. This was very, very important to highlight that benefit of having internally driven changes. We're able to implement changes, implement improvements that the users are asking for without having to go through that third party or go through the software supplier. And then here are some key benchmarks that we're continuing to monitor our business on. So we want to make sure that the system's being utilized either the same or more than our previous QMS, preferably more. How is that site adoption going? Change is hard. So we are still connecting with each site individually, making sure that they're supported, from their perspective in terms of the QMS system. They have the resources they need to continue moving forward with the integration and then support any future modules that we're going to be rolling out. So we have a continued reduction going on of our external dependence on other systems or our previous QMS. So we're continuing to work on that integration of the training, NCMR, RMA modules, and then really fine tuning that ERP connection so that we can start capitalizing on that connection between all of the digital systems that our business is utilizing. And then the last thing, feedback drives improvement, not fixes. So getting the system to a good baseline where when users are using it's a frequent day in and day out operation. That's when feedback is going to be the most valuable because at that point, it's not someone being critical of the system, it's someone wanting to improve the system or make their life easier. So those are our key benchmarks. That's how Resonetics is continuing to monitor the system. We have a couple modules we're still continuing to roll out, and we're continuing to integrate ETQ with all of our different software across the business, just to really push those paperless initiatives and really move ourselves into the digital age in terms of QMS and medical device manufacturing. So I think that is all I had.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. You had some really great nuggets of information in there and some really good tips that I think will be very helpful to a lot of people. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. So now I'd like to take a moment just to share a little bit about ETQ with you all. So, as I'm sure you all are aware, there are a lot of phases in the eQMS journey. But no matter where you are in your journey at ETQ, we are here to help you. So we have a comprehensive, purpose built eQMS where you can reduce costs, streamline operations, and build compliance into your processes. And that results in improved efficiency, time to market, sustainability, and bottom line results. We also offer a range of professional services, including managed services, to meet your needs at any stage of your quality journey. So, as you can see with ETQ, you are in good company. We serve hundreds of customers of all shapes and sizes across many industries, and we apply the learnings and best practices from across all of those industries to provide a unique value to all of our customers. And we've been doing it for over 30 years. So ETQ has been empowering quality champions just like you to use quality management as a catalyst for business success. And we also aim to be a trusted advisor to our customers. And we'd love the opportunity to share our expertise with you. All right. So we have now reached the part of our webinar for the Q&A. So thank you everyone for letting me share a little bit more about ETQ with you. All right, let's see what questions have come into the chat. Are you ready, Dan?
I am.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, quite a few. Good. Everyone's active. I love that. Okay. Dan, what would you have done differently?
The non-serious answer is I wish all the documents titles were in English because I wouldn't have had to translate them. But serious answer, I think that when we identified site level SMEs, I wish there would have been more people included in that than just the SMEs because I think having more support at the site level would have been very helpful.
Okay. Can you expand upon that? Do more support as in adoption for
I,
the new
I think
system?
I think having more people at a facility familiar with the process up front would help eliminate a lot of the questions that ended up causing kind of backup in getting that adoption moving.
Mhm. Okay, great. Yeah, it's always easier when you play Monday morning quarterback on that. Yeah, thank you. Um, so Sam or Shamel is asking, Dan, what are some of the improvements made to your QMS?
Yeah. So for us, the changes range quite a bit. So they can go from as easy as adding some additional fields to capture some additional information for some of our facilities. We've gone as far as completely redesigning a process flow for document control because we felt that we needed different phases and different phase ownership. And then the one I'm most proud of is we've created an auto routing system to ensure that documents are being released according to our company's policies. So it really ranges. It just kind of depends on where your ETQ system started at, and then how technical your site or your company is going to get with those changes.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So there's a couple questions that came in on your stats that you provided there at the end,
Yeah.
specifically on your 200 plus changes. So how
Yeah.
big are these 200 plus changes a week?
Yep.
Um, the tag on question to that is what constitutes as a change? And is that a change to the system or a document change?
Yeah. So for Resonetics, the way that we have utilized the change management is that this can include anything from a new document to new training to a new customer drawing has been added. So a change constitutes any addition to our quality management system. So essentially spread out over those 18 sites, we are either adding or updating 200 items to the quality management system a week. So it's really capturing anything that we want to track in the quality management system. I wouldn't say that it's like a change to a process or something immediately. So that it captures new documents, changes, everything included.
Okay. Yeah, everything. All right. Thank you. And now here's a comment and a question from Ray. So Ray says, very impressive presentation, very well organized. And he is wondering if this is more connected to ISO or QSR.
Yeah, so it can be both. So we, as a medical device component manufacturer, are also moving to that QMSR transition that's happening. So the ISO and the QMSR, those are going to apply more so to the audit modules and other modules contained inside the QMS. So and at least from my understanding, there's a pretty free ability to customize it between both. But in terms of what we designed for, we are ISO 13485 accredited, so that's where or certified, so that's where I was designing the system from.
Okay, perfect. Um, Jeffrey is wondering if the ETQ system is mainly internal or did you also open it up to your supply chain?
Yeah. So what I can speak to is right now it is internal. So we are still it's maintained within the confines of Resonetics, but what we are looking forward to in our supplier modules, NCR, and complaints is there is an ability to add depositor access. So you can provide very, very limited access for a supplier. And it's not even access to your QMS system, it's actually access to deposit a file or an approval. So we're looking to expand into that capability a little bit later.
Okay, perfect. And then another, I guess, connection question. Is it connected to ICH?
I apologize, I'm not familiar with ICH.
Yeah,
I'm not
I'm
sure what that might be.
not sure either, if Rena is still there. Maybe you can expand on that. Um, so maybe, I think this is, Matt's looking for maybe some advice here. So what if you have a QMS system, but there is excessive amount of documents that are too much for our operators to consult and use on a daily basis? Are there ways to rethink and reduce the number of documents?
Yeah, I think this question, one of those answers could be just, from a procedure and your own document management perspective. It would just be kind of down to how you're organizing those documents and how you're creating reference documentation. What I can speak to from a QMS perspective, something that we are starting to utilize heavily within ETQ is the linking of documents within document control and creating trainings with prerequisite courses and items like that. So, creating a very good connection between all of those documents in your QMS system is one option. The other option would be, the condensing. I don't know much about your processes or anything, but it kind of just comes down to one of those two options, I think.
Okay, yeah, that's some good advice. Thank you. And then we got an explanation for ICH. It's International Council for Harmonization, ICH Q10 Pharmaceutical Quality Systems.
My response to that is we do not, my company does not have anything to do with that. So I don't know specifically. I think that would be a question ETQ could respond to,
Sure.
like, after some internal conversation, probably.
Yeah, and I would say so we do have open APIs, so we connect with any business system. So absolutely. Okay, so let's see. I think we can take maybe a couple more questions here. Here's about how you had 18 sites to implement the QMS. So what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced across all of those locations before you had a quality management system, before you had ETQ?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to with a business such as Resonetics, we were expanding our technology a lot and acquiring new technology from businesses. So when we would integrate a new business into the Resonetics umbrella, there was no guarantee of what their QMS looked like. There was no guarantee of what their procedures looked like. So it was a hurdle for Resonetics to get them integrated into the QMS system. So before ETQ, it was a lot harder because you never knew what you were getting into. But with ETQ, it's a little bit more dynamic.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. We got one more. So integration between all of the different software, MES, ERP is important. Is that mainly managed within corporate Resonetics, or was that something ETQ had to support?
So part of the reason that Resonetics selected ETQ was that they had a good relationship with some ERP providers. So working ETQ, working with the customer, working with the ERP provider, they do have design experience when it comes to integrating those ERP systems into the QMS itself. So ETQ did support is the answer to that question.
Okay, perfect. And I think we've got one more here, and I think we're going to wrap this up. Um, so, so what advice do you have, Dan, for organizations who are just starting their quality management system evaluation? What's one thing you wish you had known earlier?
Hmm. That's a really good question. I would probably say that having a clear understanding of what the requirements across your organization, not just from quality, are before you start designing. Because more parts of your business will touch your quality management system than you originally anticipated.
That's good advice. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for being here today. And thank you, audience. for joining our webinar. We really appreciate it. And until the next one, thanks everyone and have a great rest of your day.